Hello and welcome to Jags A.M. I'm Brian Sexton, and today I am the lead singer of the band and the driver of the Winnebago. Kainani Stevens is out, so I'm filling in her role, but fear not, we've got a great show for you, and we'll start, as we always do, with big things. In January, when new head coach Liam Coen signed on, he spoke in broad platitudes about his mission, about what he was working towards. But since then, last week specifically when he met with the players, he now has dialed it in, and he shared it with the media last week, and so we share three big topics with you on which Liam Coen was much more specific. And the first is culture. It's a big word. We've talked about it a lot, and the coach was very specific.
Team meeting about rules and regulations, introductions. We had a team meeting as well about our style of play, first and foremost. Really, before we dive into the culture, we're going to dive into the way that we're going to play out on the grass. We also had a culture meeting with the entire building, which was really cool, where it was all departments, everybody was involved, and it was just a cool way of getting together, establishing the communication lines and how we want to do things and operate. So it is very important at this moment in time for us, yeah.
And John, you and I were in that meeting, and he talked about rules and the way that the team would approach it. He said he had two: protect the team, be on time. But in those two rules, he set up the expectation level for his team about their professionalism and the way they would go about their business.
Yeah, I'm curious, Brian, if you're the leader of the band, am I the roadie who doesn't wash enough before he gets on the bus?
I knew you like would be one person that would get it.
Yeah, there'd be something like that for me. Look, for you and I, Brian, and the fans, this is really not our time of year, right? But it is the coach's time of year and the players' time of year, especially when there's a regime change. And I say all that to get to the fact that fans, when they hear words like culture and when they hear buzzwords and all these things that start with alphabet letters and then they spell out so players can remember them, fans roll their eyes and say, I've heard this before. But for these guys, for trying to establish their tone, trying to establish what's going on, these weeks are really important. And I liked everything I heard last week from Liam Coen. I would be sort of disingenuous if I tried to tell fans what's different about it. To me, what's different this time of year has to come through in not necessarily what's said, but what the players feel from these coaches, especially Liam Coen and the leadership group. I think they're learning that they're going to like what they hear from those guys. To me, that's the big picture.
And we will hear from a couple of the players. Trevor Lawrence and Foye Oluokun spoke with media last week. We'll have that coming up later in the show. Another big word was workload. Let's be honest, John. We talk about the offseason program, OTAs, while they're happening. But when we get to the preseason and training camp, we forget all about it because the workload isn't that heavy. It's about getting some things done. Liam Coen focused a little bit on what he would ask of his players over these next couple of weeks.
We're going to throw as much at these guys mentally in this offseason, as much as we can handle, and probably more, much more actually, because it's not a physical time of the year. It's a time of the year we can stress them mentally. Ultimately, throw that as much at them as we can from Minnesota, from Tampa, from LA, from Green Bay, whatever it is, and see what we can handle. We're not going to know who we're truly going to be for a while, but it's more so testing to see how much they can handle and if maybe some of those concept schemes, fundamentals fit our players. That's a great question because that's something that we're constantly working through right now as a staff.
Sean, with a new coach, new coaching staff, there's obviously a lot of learning that will go on. But it's not just the players, it's the coaches learning about these players based on what Coach Coen just said, how much they can handle and what they can throw at them.
Yeah, I tend, Brian, as you know, to make fun of OTAs a little bit in the offseason program because it's not padded work. Bear in mind, I'm very well aware that I'm not the one out there doing the work. It's hard. They use this time to get in shape. But I do think anybody who's watched us, Brian, knows that you and I, OTAs, we get it, but they're not that big of a deal to us because it's not padded work. But for players, I don't want to dismiss the importance of these, especially in a new regime. And it's for the exact reasons you say. These guys have to figure out what these players can do, what their workload is. They have to get ready for it. I'm always one, once a coach has been here 3 or 4 years, there are certain players I don't necessarily think have to have OTAs. Right now, with a new regime, they're critically important.
And our final big thing, John, I was at the Baselli Foundation events this weekend. Lots of Jaguar supporters and fans. They wanted to talk about free agency. In particular, they wanted to talk about the draft, which is coming up in 9 days. But I always brought it back to this, and it's our third big thing, and it is Trevor. The quarterback is central to Liam Coen and his staff getting this job done, putting this team on the right track to win long term. And Liam last week talked a little bit about his efforts so far with the Jaguars franchise quarterback.
We are trying to create black and white lines when it comes to footwork and ways, so that understanding that the game is played in the gray. There's so much that occurs on a play. If you can have core fundamentals in footwork and that you believe in and that you trust, in those times of crisis, you have something to actually fall back on and play with a quieted mind. And so this is a great opportunity now that he is a little limited from a throwing standpoint, that we can dive into the footwork. He can dive into it on his own time and really work at this thing. So he's committed to it. It's something that we feel strongly about that can help him continue to get better. And ultimately on Sundays, we hope that shows up.
John, I know the storyline coming out of that media news conference last week was the footwork, and obviously people want to focus on the fundamentals. To me, it was the quieted mind. It's finding a way to help Trevor relax and be his best.
Yeah, and as you said at the top, all the moves they've made, even the draft, it's all going to circle back to how much they can get this running game going and how much more they can get out of Trevor. If he ascends, if he gets back to where he was playing late in 22, then there can be dramatic improvement for this team. There was, as you might expect in the O-zone, a lot of, oh my goodness, what's wrong with his footwork? Why hasn't this been fixed? To me, that is more about getting his footwork timed with this offense. So I don't think it's that unusual. And the reason that you want to do that, from what Liam Coen and Trevor both said, you're trying to get the footwork right so you can get that quieted mind, so you can know what you're doing with your feet and let your feet and the footwork and the timing of these things guide you in your decision making. As I think Liam said once, it's crazy out there. There's a lot of stuff being thrown at quarterbacks on every play. The more they can have muscle memory, meaning footwork guiding them to their decisions and their reads, then the easier it is when chaos starts. So I think you're right. I think that's really the takeaway from it, although people obviously focused on the footwork element.
And I loved the fact that he talked about black and white and rules and strategies and how everything works, but that the game isn't black and white. It's played in the gray. That was a takeaway, and I thought it was very insightful as to how this coach is working with his staff to get things righted here in Jacksonville. That does it for Big Things. When we come back, we'll hear from Trevor Lawrence and Foye Oluokun at the end of the first week of the offseason program. We'll hear from them next on Jags A.M.
Can you imagine rising for work before the crack of dawn? Tending to hundreds of acres of land before dusk? Well, that's what happens on 47,000 Florida farms every day. Florida's farmers work hard to grow nutritious food for you and your family. And you can help support them by enjoying delicious Fresh from Florida produce. Look for the sunny Fresh from Florida logo where you shop, or visit freshfromflorida.com to learn more.
Hey, I'm Logan Cook, punter for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Driving distracted or stolen is dangerous for you, and it's dangerous for everyone on the road around you. Ride with Do Not Disturb. That call, text, or social media message can wait. Choose your music before you turn on the ignition. Anytime your eyes are not on the road ahead, you're distracted, so pay attention. But remember, drive high equals DUI. Plan ahead, have a designated driver, keep a clear head to see clear ahead, and let's get everyone home safely.
And that's a Magellan first down.
Move the freight, move the freight, move the freight.
Would you like to control your own income? Work at Magellan Transport. Voted the coolest office space in Duval. Bring your talents and let your career flourish. Visit their website at MagellanLogistics.com and apply online. Trust service. Trust Magellan.
Welcome back to Jags A.M. Brian and John with you here on a Tuesday. We appreciate you joining us 9 days out from the NFL draft. And we'll have plenty of conversation about that coming up. But, John, let's go back to what we were talking about. Last week was the first week for the players and the coaches, not just to be in the building and, it's not padded stuff, but to get to know each other because everything had been so limited since the coach was hired and brought his staff on board.
Yeah, part of my shtick, I got some shtick,
I do know
Brian,
that.
is OTAs, what do they matter, coaches overplay them. And that's more joking than it is anything because I just like to joke that I don't like being out there in the sun. There is after a while, once players have been in a scheme, I do think there is a little bit of a diminishing returns for some players when they're here in their third year under a guy. But for trying to establish a culture, when else are you going to do it?
Yeah.
Because there's not time anymore. Training camp is so short without that much padded work. And, you can say what you want about, well, it's not pads. I happened to walk by with them doing some on-the-field work at one point and heard what they're doing. I'm not going to do it. Yeah. They are working, and this is critical time. And it is, what we're seeing here too, it's a new strength and conditioning staff.
Yeah.
And the strength and conditioning staff, if you think about these guys' workday, their schedule, they're with these guys more than they are their position coaches. So the strength and conditioning staff gets a pretty quick idea of who's dedicated, who's there all the time. So I'm sure Liam Coen is having conversations with the strength guys.
Yeah.
Hey, what are these guys about? What makes them tick?
It's interesting. One more thing on the culture, and I'm big on it because I didn't sense any of it last year. And I know there are people that argue with me that there was some, but obviously at 4-13, it wasn't much. It's not just the culture to the players, but Liam is got a new staff together, and they're having to figure it out from their own perspective, how they're going to do it. They can talk about it theoretically in the time that the players aren't here, but when the players return, well, now you're implementing that culture. You're implementing all of the things, the way that the coach wants to accomplish the mission on a daily basis with these players. So it's an important time for both the coaches and the players.
Well, sometimes other situations in life apply to football. How do you build culture if you're the defensive staff? How do you build culture with Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen if they're not there?
Right.
Meaning, it's in meetings. It's as you pass guys in the hallway. It's having a joke with them as you go by them after they've lifted. All of those things. There's no way to build that kind of stuff without human interaction, and furthermore, without the coaches showing these players what they're all about. You've been around this long enough to know. I don't know that it's first impressions mean everything, but players' belief in the coaches. That was one of Liam's points last week, is belief in this thing. It's a very nebulous, hard thing to grasp, but unless players believe, coaches can't do anything. The belief starts to get built now where the players look at these guys on the podium and when they're in rooms with them and say, can I be around this guy? Can I believe in what this guy's selling? That's part of what makes this time so critical.
All right, let's hear from a couple of the players on what they think so far. We'll start with the quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, who talked a bit about the footwork issue that we just heard from the coach.
More than any system I've ever learned, it's structured and based on that. And it's so everything's tied exactly to, all right, this route is on this timing, so then your next progression is off of this footwork, off this timing. So it all ties in perfect. You don't have multiple routes declaring at the same time, which is hard as a quarterback because then you're sitting back there and you got to make a decision before really the guy's open or covered, So I think they've done a really good job with the system of really thinking through how does it tie into a quarterback's feet, and that's what we've been talking about. And it takes some work and, flipping my stance, just some little things like that are small that many people wouldn't notice, but it is, I have so many banked reps of the other way. I got to just get all these on my own and work them so once camp comes around, I'm ready to go.
John, Trevor, for not having much time at this point in the system had obviously paid attention to what they did in Tampa with Baker Mayfield and understood the basic concepts of what footwork and timing would do for him in this offense.
Yeah, I've covered a lot of availabilities. As you know, it's mainly what we do during the week. I've covered Trevor for a while. So after a while, you start figuring out, okay, most of availabilities, they're just saying things that could apply to any situation because they're trying to get through the presser. But in this case, I thought he said some interesting things about this offense. He did emphasize at one point, it's not easy to learn. And that speaks to what he's going to be going through and what his teammates are going to be going through. And that's fine. It's his third offense in 5 NFL seasons. But he also said at one point that he really likes what they're doing. He believes in the concepts. So if you think about it, when were you best in school? I was never good in school, but when you're best is when you know what you're studying for. You can come out on the other end and you know it's going to benefit you. It certainly sounds like he believes in this. He believes in the concepts, and I think we go back to the footwork stuff. The footwork stuff, once you learn it, it's designed to make it easy. It's designed to be able to perform in the gray area because they're making black and white rules. So you can certainly see Trevor, who has to be going through some on the inside this offseason. At some point, I've got to get it going. I've got to be what I believe I can be. I would think, looking at this and seeing the success that Mayfield has, he's saying, I can latch onto this. This can be my rope out to where I want to be.
Let's stay with the Mayfield theme for just a moment. Coming off of his best year, the 1 year under Liam Coen in Tampa, 41 touchdowns, the running game was strong, and Trevor was asked about his relationship, his knowledge of Mayfield.
I haven't yet. You know, I know Baker, I wouldn't say well, but we're buddies, and every time I see him, you know, we try to catch up, talk. I really got a lot of respect for him. I haven't got a chance to yet, but I need to. I've heard through other people that I've talked to Baker at different things throughout the offseason that he's just says great things about him and how much he helped him and said, I'm going to love playing for him. So I've kind of heard that through, I guess, mutual friends and stuff.
All right, let's turn it to the defensive side and hear from Foye Oluokun, who talked a little bit about last season and why things went south and what it means now with a new coaching staff in Jacksonville.
We didn't win last year, so I think whatever changes that are coming are accepted because obviously we didn't play up to the standard that we needed. So whatever was going on, you know, if it's we can't really promise more wins, but obviously we needed maybe a new way to attack the season, a new way to attack the off seasons and stuff. So I think everybody's very accepting of everything new that's in store for us, you know, if that equates to more wins.
The linebacker wants to win more, and he is open to whatever it takes to get there.
Yeah, and I thought that was clearly the most interesting thing he had to say. Look, the reality is they put these guys on the podium because they have to last week, and at the time, they're 2 or 3 days into getting to know these guys. So for Foye or for anybody really to stand up there and say, hey, I love these guys, I'm all in, they're still learning them. So I thought Foye's comments were very insightful and very professional of, hey, we were 4-13 last year. We didn't win enough. There's going to be change. So these are the guys that come in. We're going to give this a chance. We like what we're hearing. He's a very intelligent guy who tries to say what's really on his mind during these things. And I think he was very honest very anxious to see what Anthony Campanile and the staff is saying, likes it, and is ready to embrace it. I think he'll be a lot better on it in training camp when everybody understands what everybody's all about. They're still on their first week of school and still trying to get to know their teachers. I liked what I heard last week, and I think it's going to be fascinating to watch.
All right, when we come back on Jags A.M., more perspective, this time on the Jaguars from the Los Angeles Rams view, or at least someone who covers them. Kai Stevens sat down with Jourdan Rodrigue, who covers the Rams for The Athletic, and we'll bring you that conversation after this on Jags A.M.
Hi, my name is Charlie Jourdan, and I'm the manager of social media for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So as manager of social media, we serve as a bridge between the fans and the franchise, and so my passion is rooted in being a fan, but I also get to work with the team each day. Bright Future Scholarship was huge for me because I was able to pursue an education at the University of Florida, and because I didn't have to worry about paying for classes, I could spend my time covering the sports teams that I work around. I'm extremely grateful for the Bright Future Scholarship and the Florida Lottery specifically for allowing me to earn an education.
Hey, I'm Logan Cook, punter for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Driving distracted or stolen is dangerous for you, and it's dangerous for everyone on the road around you. Ride with Do Not Disturb. That call, text, or social media message can wait. Choose your music before you turn on the ignition. Anytime your eyes are not on the road ahead, you're distracted, so pay attention. But remember, drive high equals DUI. Plan ahead, have a designated driver, keep a clear head to see clear ahead, and let's get everyone home safely.
Brooks Rehabilitation is proud to be the official rehabilitation partner of the Jacksonville Jaguars. We are here for them, and we are here for you. Ranked #1 physical rehabilitation hospital in Florida by U.S. News and World Report, our playbook is individualized treatment and exceptional care to get you back to living your life. Brooks has cutting-edge technology and therapy solutions in every care setting, treating sports injury, orthopedics, brain, spinal injuries, and more. Go beyond your expectations with Brooks Rehabilitation.
Move the freight. Move the freight. Magellan, voted the coolest workspace in Jacksonville, invites you to check them out and see if you can help them move the freight at Magellan.com. All right, Brian and John with you back here on Jags A.M. And Kai Stevens, who is out last week, found time to connect with someone who covers the Rams on a daily basis for The Athletic. Jourdan Rodrigue has an excellent podcast called The Play Callers. You should check that out. Check out Kai's conversation first.
All right, I'm here now with The Athletic senior writer covering the LA Rams, Jourdan Rodrigue. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you're very well versed with James Gladstone and kind of how the Rams do things, so I really wanted to pick your brain on this a little bit.
Thank you so much for having me. How is LA Rams East going?
It's going really well. We love the vibe in the building. It's very, obviously beach towns and whatnot, but yes, we're loving this. It's very lighthearted. The change was immediate. Obviously, you've been around James a lot, so you know the deal, but just the whole regime change has been really great here. So it's kind of exciting. And now that we're getting into the draft time, which is obviously the front office's favorite time of year, we're kind of learning a little bit more about him. But what we heard from the interview process was when James Gladstone came in, just his interview as a whole, his vision was really what sold them, because we had been hearing some other names maybe as favorites going in, but James really came in not out of nowhere, but just kind of really won them over with what he had to say. So with your time working with him, were you surprised by that at all, or were you kind of, yeah, of course, anyone that would talk to him would probably see it that way?
When I saw his name included on the list, first of all, I was like, oh, how did Les Snead let that happen? Because he has been so behind the scenes for so many years in LA. But to know James and to have worked with him as closely as I did last year, where I was interned with their draft and scouting department, is to not be surprised by this at all. The way that he not only has a vision and a very meticulous and granular plan for every operation and every part of the talent identification, scouting, and draft process, the talent acquisition process, part of the pro personnel department as well. And the way he can explain it, it was just, to me, I called Les and I was like, all right, good luck keeping this guy now, and it was no surprise. I think to anyone who's ever worked with him, that he quickly dominated this interview and became the guy, because he just can explain a vision and then goes and creates that vision, as he did in Los Angeles when they overhauled their draft department in 2022 and 2023.
Absolutely. We've seen that already, even just with free agency, making cap space, letting go of some veterans, some faces that we were familiar with around here. But going into the draft, it's exciting for us to kind of see where this might end up. Obviously, outside looking in, we've seen what the Rams have done the last couple of years. What was James's role in all of that? Because the way you guys have been drafting the last couple of years, the Rams have been really successful.
Yeah, well, James was sort of moved into this role to help basically overhaul the entire operation of not just the scouting processes and keeping what worked, but also modernizing and making things a little bit more progressive in other ways, changing some of the strategy with which they approach the draft, blending certain analytics programming that they were creating, some of which they created from scratch. So Jake Temmey joining the organization, I think, is also quietly a huge and significant move for the Jaguars. Some of the ways that they attacked the draft and strategized, treating it as if it's a game that they're play calling in less so sort of a luck of the draw type of thing. And I think that this is going to be really interesting because you're going to start to see at least some of those, probably not all until next offseason, but at least some of those practices and processes take place immediately with the strategy that they use. I know he's going to be using a call sheet like Les Snead does, like as a play caller would, that you see on the sidelines, like Liam Coen will when he calls games. He's going to use a lot of these different methods that the Rams also had in place. But knowing James, he's also going to put his own twist and spin on things. And also knowing James, he's a listener. So he's not going to just come in and want to do things only his way, only the Rams way. He's going to listen to what actually works and what has been working and clicking with the scouting department and talent ID process that's already in place. And also making sure that those people feel comfortable with this transition and that they feel heard, that those methods are also being deployed as well as sort of this hybrid older regime, newer regime draft that's about to happen.
Sure, because we talk a lot about the upper leadership, obviously, with Tony Baselli coming in as EVP and then Liam Coen as the new coach. But the scouting department is still the past scouting department, other than a couple of pieces that have been added. So a lot of collaboration to see there as to what they're exactly going to do. But they do have 10 picks as of this point. 4 or 6 of them are in the first couple of rounds of the draft. So to kind of hear those numbers, I mean, with the Rams, obviously it's not necessarily going to be the exact same way that he's done it before, but would anything surprise you with how he functions, or is it kind of just be prepared for anything with him?
No, you nailed it, because one thing I've learned over the last several years, particularly covering this Los Angeles Rams team and just how differently they do things relative to other teams across the league, is you go in expecting literally anything. I'd say trading up, obviously in this case, they pick so high in the first round anyway, but like trading up has always been the least likely scenario with this team. But I recall, I did an interview with James and Greg Rosenthal for NFL Daily at the Combine, and James slipped in this little, we have 10 picks for now.
Yep.
That totally got my trigger going in turn. Okay, yeah, all right. Well, the Rams had 14 picks when they were totally rebuilding their roster in 2023 and replacing some of those patch and go older, cheaper veterans on those contracts as they went. Bringing in the large free agency class sent a signal to me that they're going to try to, over time, take those spots and fill them with draft picks that they're going to draft and develop, but also need those veterans to help the young kids grow, right? And also need those veterans to help maintain the viability of the roster while those players are developing. So I would not be surprised to see James go get as many picks as he possibly can. And the Rams found 5 starters in that first class, and then 5 in this 10 draft pick class the next season. So I would not be surprised to see him go volume on this.
We've heard a lot about obviously draft and develop, but giving them a chance as rookies to be contributors right off the bat, right? So picking at 5, at least for us, what we've been discussing, there's a lot of positions they could go with. I always say anything besides quarterback, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. So what are some things that James really values in terms of when looking at draft picks, not necessarily always need of the team, but what's something he values in the players that he evaluates?
Yeah, I will be interested to see how this develops in your building and in their building, because I certainly got a firsthand look of how this developed in Los Angeles under James, where the Rams have found a way to, and I don't want to say quantify because I think that's reductive of what it actually is, but to articulate like how a person, a human being, will fit not just within their building, but also within Sean McVay's offense. And I know Liam is incredibly drawn to that and also has firsthand experience with that. And that takes an extremely high level of communication between the coaching staff and the front office, which I know is a priority for the 3 people in leadership in Tony, James, and Liam. And I think that that's what is going to really inform like the type of person that they decide to bring in. The Rams started throwing out some of these, I guess, stereotypical like traits-based analyses. They don't really care about arm length if the player could play. Braden Fisk is an example of that. They don't really care about the age of the player if the player can come in and contribute. Injury history is always going to be a flag for any team, but they're willing to overlook certain things if they know that they can get that player with, in their building with Reggie Scott and in the training staff. Those types of things are weighed in part and parcel with a huge emphasis on these surveys that they do, these, personality assessments that they do, that they kind of blend together in a bespoke evaluation that they've created over time. And that informed the quote unquote make him a Ram process that found them guys like Puka Nacua, Kobe Turner, who's an undersized defensive tackle, Braden Fisk, who has short arms, these guys who run slow 40s but play amazing. It's those types of things that I'm particularly interested in watching the process unfold in Jacksonville, because I know that James has a plan for that alongside Jake Temmie and Liam and Tony. And I think that this is going to be where they really identify, now no longer Rams, but Jaguars.
What it is to be a Jaguar. Absolutely. We're very excited to kind of see what evolves in the next couple of weeks. Jourdan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Some very thought-provoking insight there from Jourdan. Again, her podcast, which kind of it looks at the Shanahan tree, of which McVay is a part of which Liam Coen is obviously a part of, and I would check it out. You can get it wherever you find your podcasts. It's a 5-part series, and it's very deep and very insightful as well. Thanks to Kai and Jourdan for joining us on Jags A.M. When we come back, John and I will wrap it all up.
Don't make a bad call when it comes to servicing your home. Cooling off with a baby pool in the house to fix your air conditioning problem is a bad call. Trying to catch a wave in a flooded bathroom is a bad call. Using a burning electrical panel to make s'mores is a bad call. The next time something goes wrong, make a good call to Donovan.
Whether you need air, electric, or plumbing service, Donovan is always a good call. It's why we've been trusted by our customers for almost 40 years, and why you can trust us to deliver fast, reliable service to your home. Donovan, always a good call.
Visit DonovanAC.com today.
Floridians, do you know how close you are to freshness? It's not a plane or a ship ride away. It's not across an ocean or over the equator. It's not even a far drive. The peak of freshness is at your grocery store, and it's called Fresh from Florida. Fresh from Florida is local produce grown by farmers right here in our own state, meaning it's always fresh, always in season, and always mouth-wateringly good. Look for the sunny Fresh from Florida logo or ask for it by name where you shop.
Hi, my name is Charlie Jourdan, and I'm the manager of social media for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So as manager of social media, we serve as a bridge between the fans and the franchise. And so my passion is rooted in being a fan, but I also get to work with the team each day. Bright Future Scholarship was huge for me because I was able to pursue an education at the University of Florida, and because I didn't have to worry about paying for classes, I could spend my time covering the sports teams that I work around. I'm extremely grateful for the Bright Future Scholarship and the Florida Lottery specifically for allowing me to earn an education.
Jags A.M. is brought to you by Fresh from Florida. It's always in season. Welcome back. Brian and John here to wrap things up on Jags A.M. Kai will be back next week. And next week's show, by the way, will be on Wednesday, and I will be in Green Bay, so it'll be Kai and John here. John, the LA Rams conversation is just fascinating because when you hear from someone like Jourdan Rodrigue, you understand they really do think differently, asymmetrical, if you will, towards the old way of thinking in the NFL.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to watch them put this together. I kind of laughed at the owners' meetings when Liam was asked once again about James Gladstone, and they both at various points during the meeting kind of laughed and said, it wasn't like we were homies at the Rams. I mean, they weren't sitting in a dorm room at training camp sort of plotting this act together, but they think similarly. And I think you're seeing in Gladstone as you talk to him that they do have an ability to see the league in a different way. And I think the ability to adapt to situations as they come is probably the common element. I think it was Liam referred to the Rams as sort of the North Star, which to me means it's not as if they're going to say, we're going to do everything like the Rams did.
Right.
But bringing that ability to adapt and to see the league for how it is right now, I think that's been the trademark of the Rams because they have built in different ways since McVay has been there and been able to adapt and sort of stay over their feet, if you will, which I think is going to be the interesting thing to watch here.
How patient will we have to be to see the influence of the Rams? And the reason I asked, because I thought it was one of the best questions that Liam was asked and answered, was how do you balance wanting to build something entirely different than they've had in Jacksonville, but at the same time winning in 2025?
Yeah, I never quite know how to answer that question. What fans ask, how patient should we be? What should our expectations be? I know from talking to people, this team feels like it can go win now. what win mean, 17-0? No, but they can compete. I think they are trying to take the approach, we want to be better in 2026 than we are in 2025. They're trying not to tie themselves into we have to win X, because it's impossible to know that. They feel like they should be able to win now and sort of maintain winning here and then build the draft so that you can get up to an elite level. I think that's the best way to describe it. What should expectations be? Hope for the best. I wish I had a better answer.
One final thought. Mock drafts. Was asked a lot about them at the Baselli Foundation the last couple of days. And I try to remind people that mock drafts try to match need and value, right? They try to find where the player fits and if a team has a need. But what they don't understand, and this goes back to the asymmetrical way of thinking, is what a team, the Jaguars in particular, think about a particular player. Yeah. So I know everyone's focused on Mason Graham. I mean, almost every mock draft, and you do a mock draft tracker.
It's probably 60-75%.
Yeah,
right.
at least. But I caution people.
Yeah, I mean, not to interrupt.
Not to get wrapped up in that.
75% of mock drafts you say Mason Graham.
Yeah.
I don't get the feeling that they are that locked in on any particular player to make that
right
a truth. That makes sense. Might be Mason Graham, but I don't necessarily think that they haven't cut out pictures of Mason Graham and put them on their dorm room walls.
But people look at the mock drafts, and the mock drafts, to be fair, that's all they can do.
Right.
And so people were leading with the question, what do you think of Mason Graham? How does he fit in this scheme?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't, as you just said, I wouldn't get too dialed in on that one because these guys think differently.
It's hard to enunciate it, but people before the draft like to talk about positions, and I get questions all the time. Should they take a defensive tackle at number 5? Should they take a wide receiver? The way they think, you can't just say a position. It's got to be, what do you think of this guy?
Yeah.
Because it's not the position you're bringing into the building next week or in 2 weeks. It's the guy.
Yeah.
And if the guy,
at 5,
if you get a great defensive tackle who's got great ability and all he wants to do is sit in his dorm and play Call of Duty,
right,
then you haven't got the right guy. You've got the right position, and in 2 years you're looking for a job.
And at 5,
you got to think
about
the player. Yeah, it's about greatness at that position. I think they're going to lean toward player that they think can be a Hall of Famer someday. That's what you're looking for.
And at any position,
right,
your roster needs that. And that'll do it for this edition of Jags A.M. Don't forget, Huddle Up Podcast tomorrow, John and Bucky Brooks. And then on Thursday, I'm sitting in for JP Shadrick, who's out this week, for Jags Happy Hour. And, of course, next week, wall-to-wall coverage of all things Jaguars and Green Bay and draft. Thank you again to our entire production crew for putting this fine show on. And we'll see you next week here on Jags A.M.